Welcome to Chemical Reactions, the podcast where we explore the latest insights and innovations in liquid bulk transportation, chemical manufacturing, and other facets of the chemical industry. Presented by Matlack Leasing, your partner for liquid bulk trailer leasing solutions. Now here's your host, Alex Steakely.
Hey guys, welcome back to Chemical Reactions, the podcast about the chemical transport world and the people in it. Today I've got Jason McDaniel from Bulk Transporter. If you've been around LinkedIn at all, if you're in the chemical transport space, I'm sure you've seen this guy posting on NTTC all over the place. So good to have you, Jason.
Yeah, glad to be here and be part of this special occasion. As far as I understand it, this is the first in a series of podcasts you're going to be producing. So I'm glad I'm part of a guinea pig maybe, or just part of the deal.
First one, best one, right? I mean, who better to have on than the guy that's in the know in chemical transport?
That's what I'm hoping. Hopefully we can make a good first impression.
Yeah, awesome, man. Well, like I said, good to have you on. And just give me a little background about you, man. I know you've been writing for Bulk Transporter for a while. How'd you kind of get into that?
Yeah, first of all, Bulk Transporter is one of the oldest trade publications in all of trade media. It really is founded in 1937, so been around since World War II. The previous editor, his name was Chuck Wilson. He had been editor of the magazine for 31 years. So, luckily I was able to study under him for a little bit, learn about the industry. And then, I'm just trying to be a good steward for this publication and keep it going because it has a special place in my heart, having known people that worked on the magazine for so long, knowing the previous owners before our parent company that owns us now, which is Endeavor Business Media. So, it's been great. I've been doing this now for 8 years. Started in 7 years, I guess. Started in 2018. Been the editor of the magazine for 5 years since 2020, right around COVID. It's when the previous editor retired. And I went to school for journalism, UT graduate.
Hey,
hook 'em horns. Did sports journalism for 15, 20 years before I got into this. And, about the time, it was great when my kids were younger. They stayed at home with me, worked from home, and, was a contractor, freelancer. Most of that time wrote for the Houston Chronicle. But when they got a little bit older and started school, I was just kind of ready to get back into an office environment. Needed to get a real job with benefits and that kind of thing. And so it just kind of worked out where I found this company. It was owned by a different company at the time, and went to work for them. It was Inform, I think, at the time. And worked in an office down in Shepherd. And then, of course, COVID came around, and they closed our office and sent us home. And never opened the office back up again. So now I'm back at home, working out of my home.
One-man band.
Just been journalism forever. Tried to bring some of that newspaper background that I have to the job. But then also just, kind of being an advocate for the industry. We want to, at Bulk Transporter, share best practices. Highlight fleets that are doing it the right way, especially when it comes to safety, and then introduce new equipment and technology to our readers, because that's what it's all about: efficiency, safety, trying to continue to improve and deal with all the changing conditions that truck drivers or trucking companies have to deal with.
Yeah, it's interesting. Chemical transport is such a niche market, right? Mm-hmm. And you coming from sports, did you have a background in chemical transport? Did somebody
No, I didn't have any background in chemical. I mean, or trucking at all.
Yeah.
I watch the car restoration shows. I drive a Challenger. I like vehicles, but I didn't know much about trucks coming into it. So it was definitely a learning process. A lot of the writing and reporting and storytelling translates pretty easily, but there was definitely a learning curve.
Oh yeah.
And that's why I say I was fortunate to study under people who've done this a long time. And then having, been able to go out to a lot of different events, especially the National Tank Truck Carriers events that I get to go to, you meet a lot of great people. And there's a lot of people that are really generous with their time and their knowledge and are willing to help you. And it is a niche market, which has allowed me to get to know a lot of people in the industry a lot better than in the overall trucking segment. Some of those events you go to and there's so many more people, it's so much larger.
Yeah.
It's hard to get to know everybody. And it takes time to build up that rapport where people want to go to you to tell their stories.
I noticed too on your LinkedIn, you write for refrigerated transport as well. Would you say there's a lot of similarities between the two, or do you think that one community is a little more tight knit than the other?
I would definitely think the reefer community would be bigger. There are similarities. So from a historical perspective for the publications, they were always part of what they call the trailer group. and that's refrigerator transporter, bulk transporter, and trailer bodybuilders. And that's because what makes those segments unique is the trailer, not the truck.
Yeah.
So they're all kind of specialized transportation. But yeah, there's definitely some unique aspects to tank truck, especially when it comes to the types of products they haul, the level of safety, the level of insurance that they have to have.
Yeah.
But both specialized fields. So refrigerator transporter is another publication that was around for a long time. But the print product was phased out a few years ago. I did produce that print product for a couple of years. Now it's all digital. It's actually a channel on Fleet Owner, and it's a special section that comes out in Fleet Owner magazine twice a year, where we highlight a fleet and then an equipment or technologies type story. And so that's kind of the direction we've gone with that. And so, and what makes also refrigerated trailers unique is those transport refrigeration units. So
Yeah.
know a lot about Thermo King, Carrier, a lot of the other newer companies in that market.
Yeah.
But some similarities, but also some differences.
Yeah, I know the bare minimum about reefer transportation. My dad's got a produce. He works for a produce company, Shoneman Produce. So grew up working in the warehouses over there. Saw that, but they're both specialized. I think chemical even more so than reefer with everything that you've got to go through, DOT, tank washes, all that stuff. I mean, one wrong move, like you said. Insurance is sky high for a reason in bulk transport.
Well, that's one of the first things I had to learn covering refrigerated transportation too. Is that reefer doesn't mean what you might think it does.
Yeah.
In some areas, other areas of the country.
And then your sports writing background, man. Any cool stories?
I mean, I was very fortunate. I've gotten to cover a lot of great games, pro level, college, high school. So I've covered state championship games, covered playoff games, been in the locker room for Texans games.
So all sports across the board, baseball,
yeah, because
football,
I was kind of like a utility player. I would just kind of fill in the gaps, help out wherever I could.
Yeah.
I got to interview Priest Holmes, which was one of my idols.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Do a one-on-one interview with him back in the day, and it was always crazy to me that he was a backup in college and then was so great in the pros. But of course, who was he behind? Ricky Williams.
Yeah.
I got to do a lot of great things. But one thing I would say about covering transportation as opposed to sports is that in a lot of cases, especially when you get to the pros, the athletes talk to you because they have to. It's part of their contract. They don't necessarily want to.
Yeah.
And they don't necessarily even want to be around you sometimes. Whereas you get over to the transportation side, and especially in a niche segment like tank trucks, they're happy to have you around. They're happy to have that coverage. They're generous with their time and their stories. And so it's a lot different dynamic that I've also appreciated. So I got to have a lot of fun doing sports. But this has been a lot interesting and helped me kind of grow and take the next step in my career.
So like I was telling you off air, I referred to you as the Adam Schefter of the liquid bulk transporter space. But if everybody's willing to talk to you, you don't need any special sources or unnamed sources. It's pretty wide open and everybody's pretty transparent.
Yeah, that's the thing about building up that rapport is that tank truck fleets give me access that they don't afford a lot of other people into their operations, their marketing strategies, different things that are going on internally, and that's just something that's been built up over time. That trust that you have, I definitely don't use unnamed sources. A lot of times I'll work with fleets to make sure I'm sending the right message that they want to, because it's trade media. It's not quite the same as as long as you don't call me Steve, Stephen A. Smith. It's not quite the same. I'm not there just to be a talking head. I'm trying to share stories, help readers, get some insight into some new things that might be able to help them run their business better, that kind of thing.
I mean, maybe if the podcast space doesn't work out, we start a first take for liquid bulk transport, and we just argue about different transporters.
I'd rather do like an around the horn style.
Oh, there you go.
As a journalist, I appreciate that style a little better.
Okay. Well, let's jump into a little bit more, serious topics about where the transport space has been and where it's headed. Obviously, chemical transport companies had a big boom kind of coming off that COVID space. Mm-hmm. It's since kind of been a little bit of a roller coaster. I think you're really equipped to talk about it. Where do you see kind of the state of the industry right now? Any kind of, I know we're still seeing depressed rates per mile across the board. It's not what it was during COVID, which, those were outliers anyway. But anything that you're seeing in the space, that some headwinds that we're hitting, or different challenges that a lot of people are talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously the overall trucking industry, it's been a tough couple of years. a recession. They called it for a while a rolling recession, I think, or something like that. And you expect a big dip, and that doesn't really come. But then you don't really see that upswing either. But I think it's been rougher in some segments. Like reefer transportation, I think has been hit harder, and then just regular dry van transportation, LTL especially, where I think they've really been hurting. And you've seen a lot of that capacity exit the market with some of the smaller trucking companies, DOT numbers that are not surviving, that went out on their own during COVID when the rates were sky high and everything was running as fast as you could. And then they also purchased equipment when maybe it was a little bit too expensive, and so they were having trouble surviving through that downtime. But I think what you've seen in tank truck sector, which I think is kind of general, is that it's overall fared better. I think you've seen some rates suffering, you've seen some volumes go down, but it hasn't gone down as hard. The fall hasn't been as precipitous, I guess. And they've had a little bit more resiliency, because you still need fuel, you still need those those food inputs, those chemical inputs. You still need houses, even though the construction side has probably been tougher because of some of the home building with the rates being so high.
Yeah.
But I think overall they fared better, and I've heard that. I was at National Tank Truck Carriers annual conference in Tampa recently, and there was a tank truck market analysis presented there by someone from American Trucking Associations, and I think it was FTR or ACT, one of the analyst firms. And they've said overall that they've done well, and they're expecting some growth still. And chemicals, I think, have been the play, but I think that people are starting to realize that EVs are not going to. The adoption is not going to be as quick as people had hoped.
No. I saw Peterbilt just rolled out some EVs.
Well, yeah, so the ACT Expo was recent, and you still have manufacturers rolling out those electric vehicles because, it takes a long time. OEMs can't pivot that quickly. I mean, you have a new administration come in, they have new priorities. They're talking about rolling back some timelines or, delaying some timelines as far as zero emission adoption, but the OEMs can't pivot that quickly. And the ACT Expo, as far as I understand, was pretty busy. I mean, it was one of the bigger events they've had there. There was a lot going on, but the electric vehicle adoption is definitely slower than anticipated, and it's going to be even slower on the tank truck side, I think.
Yeah, especially with the infrastructure. I mean, right now you can pretty much go straight shot to your deliveries. If they had to time out where they're stopping and kind of going out of the way, you're just talking about extra costs being passed on to the consignee.
Yeah, with the weight of a battery taking away payload capacity, that's just going to be more trucks on the road, which is kind of anti-productive.
Yeah.
And, and then not just that, on the tank truck side, you just have the safety issue. Are electric vehicles intrinsically safe? And right now, as far as I understand, there's no petroleum, there's no loading racks or storage terminals that are allowing electric vehicles to pull in there and load fuel into a trailer.
That's true.
Because it's just, you can't say for sure that it's safe.
Yeah. Yeah, because we haven't seen it. Yeah, I haven't even thought about that. I've just been thinking about the cost side of it. But yeah, I mean, if they're not even allowed to pull in there, then you might have to talk to every producer and change the way that they're loading and change their loading racks.
Yeah, so it's the capacity, it's the safety issue, and then with all trucking, of course, it's just the range for long-range vehicles. When you're going to have to recharge, are you going to be able to get there and back? Is the shipper or the consignee going to have a terminal where you can charge there and then head back? And then obviously just the cost of an electric truck. I mean,
and how long that's going to take. I mean, I know some friends that have electric vehicles for their personal vehicle, and if they don't charge it at home and they've got to sit at a gas station or whatever that has those power chargers, if they're not a fast bank, it's 2 hours.
Yeah, no, definitely tank truckers are not fans of EVs. I think if there's anything they're leaning toward, maybe on the alternative fuel side, it's the hydrogen or hydrogen fuel cells. And then, of course, some of the renewables, a lot of that stuff has gotten a lot better as well. But, I think there's just a lot of issues with EV adoption. And, there's just a lot of factors that are going to continue to slow it down, I think.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we've gone through it and we've seen kind of a shift. But another headwind is obviously tariffs. What have you been hearing about kind of that market? Obviously, before we were doom and gloom with 145% on China, and everybody was up in the 60s and 70s, and now we've kind of tampered expectations. Everybody's playing nice together. What are you seeing on that end?
Yeah, so I think the new buzzword this year has been uncertainty. There's always some new buzzword that people are throwing around, and And right now, you hear that everywhere you turn. As far as, especially when you start talking to forecasters about what the economy is going to do, is there going to be a worse recession now? What's the stock market doing? So you hear all of those things. It's interesting. I was going to bring up this report that I saw recently that I was planning to publish a story about, and they've asked me to hold off a little bit. We're going to go back because I think they may do some revisions because of tariffs.
Okay.
But they did actually talk a little bit about that as far as what the impact would be on the tank truck sector. And the overall thing with this report is that they're expecting above GDP growth through 2029.
Oh, wow.
As far as rates, volumes, and revenue.
Yeah.
I think the number I saw was like 2.5 times GDP through 2029. And there's a lot of different factors that are a positive for tank truck carriers, which I can get into. But as far as the tariffs, even before they did the revisions on this report, one thing they were talking about was the nearshoring impact and how that could help tank truck carriers, because you're bringing manufacturing that, over more manufacturing to the U.S. is going to be more potential for those chemicals, hauling chemicals, those input materials that manufacturers need.
Yeah.
And then also, if tariffs are working how the current administration says they will, and also opening up new markets for U.S. producers to be able to send new products out into other countries, UK or China or whoever they're negotiating with now, that's going to open up more opportunity to diversify, send more products out that are produced here.
Yeah.
One thing I heard was plastic resins. If they're able to open up new markets for U.S.-made plastic resins, that's going to be a benefit to moving those things around for export purposes, getting them to the dock, maybe ISO tanks.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of uncertainty, but I think there's a lot of positives that tank truck carriers can look forward to that are good economic headwinds. Like we mentioned, the delay in adoption of EV vehicles, because it's another thing that's interesting with tank truck carriers is when they start considering these alternative fuels, it's not just about what will be powering their tractors, it's what are they going to be hauling in their trailers.
Yeah, 100%.
You hear about some of the larger manufacturers developing liquid hydrogen trailers now. I've seen major energy producers doing more experimenting with these tube trailers, these compressed gas tube trailers, which are $1 million pieces of equipment that most carriers aren't going to be able to factor into their rates. So tank truck carriers have to consider that from two different perspectives: what's going to power their vehicles, and then what are they going to be hauling, and what does that mean to their network, and how they're going to need to set up their terminals for the future.
Yeah, 100%. Just on touching on, you touched on raw materials with tariffs. A lot of our customer base we've got two big ones. It's liquid transport companies and chemical manufacturers. And talking to both of them just in candid conversations, they thought that maybe it would open up new lanes for them because of raw material production coming back stateside.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely some positive optimism, cautious optimism, but wait and see is probably the way to think about it.
Well, not to keep bringing up reefer trailers, but, I did see another report recently. I know Utility Trailer, they're one of the biggest refrigerated trailer manufacturers in the country. They were excited about a new company that was said that they were going to be creating or setting up a huge aluminum steel mill in their area, and they're one of the largest consumers of aluminum in the country. So,
wow.
I mean, you are seeing, sometimes you don't hear about it in the general media, but you are seeing some of those positive signs that where, maybe hopefully if we can survive what other repercussions these tariffs have on us as regular consumers at the store going to buy groceries, that, if we can keep it going long enough and withstand some of those pain points, that it could have some beneficial impact across the board.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen a couple of your different articles in the latest issue of Bulk Transporter, but want to get your take on it. What are some cool innovations that you're seeing from either transport companies or different trailer companies, manufacturers? Anything cool that you're seeing coming down the pipeline that you're really excited about?
Yeah, well, there's definitely some different things we can talk about. I mean, obviously, smart trailers have been a big thing that I think the OEMs and some of the suppliers have been working toward. Drove Technologies is one that I've reported on a lot with their Airbox One, which is kind of just this universal communication box that you can put on a trailer that has every possible way of communicating and connecting with all the other different technologies that are out there. So you can kind of unify everything and have one single pane of glass, so to speak, to look through. Because I think that's one of the pain points now is there's so many great technologies as far as sensors and managing the wheel end and keeping temperatures where you want them and cameras and all these different things. It's just now the pain point is integrating all of that
Yeah.
into one usable system that you can make sense of, and that, it's not just something cool to have, that you can actually get some positive results as far as efficiencies from.
Yeah.
So it's, smart trailers is something that I think a lot of people are working on, have been working on. Heil and Polar.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can mention them. I don't
Yeah,
know what all
yeah,
you have
yeah,
in the
yeah.
MATLAB leasing
Hey, yeah.
fleet. They have the tank AI system that they've been working on. So, that's something that's been going on for a while, and I think it's really cool. Now, something I saw recently, I went to a tank summit over in LaPorte about a month ago, and there was a new company there called PT Coupling that has a new piece of equipment called the Safe Heat system. And so this is for trailers that are running, that are insulated and heated, for heated products like asphalt, I think, and some other similar products that need to be heated in transportation. So to my understanding, the general best practice has been to tap into the truck's coolant system and use the antifreeze that is heated through the engine, run through pipes in the trailer to keep the product
Through
in the
those
trailer
insulated
heated.
panels. Yeah.
But with these newer tractors and the new emission systems, it's stealing the truck's antifreeze, is actually messing with some of the sensors in the engine and throwing off some of their telematics and calibrations, and causing the engines to go into regen mode.
Interesting.
And the OEMs are starting to notice that, and they're getting these alerts, and they're saying, what's going on?
Yeah.
And they're just kind of finding out what this standard industry practice has been for years. And it's also, you also see where you could have different types of antifreeze mixing too. And whereas an OEM might want one specific type of OEM or one specific type of antifreeze or fluid in their coolant system. So it's becoming an issue. And then, another problem that PT Coupling raised when they were there is that a lot of times leaves drivers needing to refill their radiator, their coolant system reservoir, with fluid on the side of the road, maybe sometimes, or before they're about to take off on a load. And sometimes that means climbing up on top of the wheel in the rain to, which it's not really safe.
No.
So this company created this Safe Heat system, which has its own power supply and its own antifreeze system. And you mount it on behind the truck's cab, kind of where like a hose reel.
The hose reel's in like the little walkway space between the truck and the trailer.
It just mounts right there, and it uses its own power and its own antifreeze to keep the trailer heated. And it's a separate system.
That's awesome.
It doesn't tie into the truck's engine coolant system at all. So
yeah,
I thought that was really interesting, that what the standard practice has been for so long, and then this was a solution that I thought was very interesting and probably pretty adept, that a lot of people could probably find some use out of.
Yeah, and that I like the Airbox One too that you were talking about with the real-time reporting. Does that go to the driver who then has to relay that to dispatch, or that goes straight to dispatch and the customer?
I think they would both have access to it. The driver can get that in the cab, and then you can also track it either live in real time in the office or through email alerts.
Yeah.
Now, so there's one company, Pilot, that is working. That's a big believer in the system. The Airbox One has been working with them for a long time. They're a fuel hauler, obviously, and they've been doing some interesting things with dynamic inflation systems, where they're actually able to inflate and deflate the tires based on how much fuel they have in the trailer.
Oh.
So they're before they're getting to the loading rack, they're using geofencing to go ahead and start inflating the tires to get ready for that full load. And then as they're making their deliveries at the different stations and more product weight is coming off, they're able to deflate the tires and let a little bit more air out of them, because, and so that optimizes tire efficiency. It optimizes, how much, and they're also using weight sensors to maximize how much fuel they can put in the trailer, as far as, because normally they have to leave a little bit of space for potential retain. By using the weight sensors, they can maximize how much fuel they put in the trailer. And so that, be more efficient, deliver more loads with the same amount of equipment, or maybe downsize equipment.
Less wear and tear on equipment too.
And then better gas mileage. With the tire savings, also comes better fuel economy.
Yep.
So there's all kinds of interesting things that they're doing with some of that smart trailer technology, in addition to like the cameras, being able to monitor, when you're at a fuel station and it's very close confines, what's going on around the driver, or is the driver following the necessary steps to deliver the fuel safely and without a cross drop or something like that.
Yeah, I actually met with a customer this past Friday, and they were talking about how dash cams saved them a potential huge insurance liability because they were involved in an accident. Their driver was not at fault, but obviously the secondary person was just in a car, and they were going after them because they've got the big insurance liability. But they were able to review all the footage, show the driver inside the dash and his surroundings, and proved zero fault. So I think that's a really cool thing that they're working on.
Yeah, I think cameras pretty much are they have to be a standard part of your how you spec a truck these days, because
100%.
Yeah, with the nuclear verdicts and the way things have gone, you have to have that to protect yourself. I think a lot of drivers were skeptical, and I think that's one where, innovation took a little while to be accepted maybe.
Yeah.
But I think drivers have kind of accepted that it's not just to spy on them and see what they're doing. It's to protect them. It's to protect the company, because you see so many, you see the billboards on every street with the truck attorney, targeting the trucking industry because they think they have unlimited resources.
Yeah.
And, especially on the tank truck side, because the premiums, the amount of coverage they have to have already is so high.
Yeah.
But so the cameras, they protect you, the driver. They help with coaching and training. There's a lot of people using AI systems now to help coaching and gamifying performance improvement to get drivers excited about being safe.
Yeah.
But they also protect the company. The liability, it's just almost a must-have nowadays. And then also on the trailers now, besides cameras on the side monitoring what's going on, they can use them as backup cameras to navigate those tight spaces a little bit easier. So there's just a lot of different benefits that go along with that. I think that you just have to have a camera now.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. We've talked a lot about the trailer side. I want to bring up trucks because I've got some friends that work for Rush Truck Centers and other large dealerships, and they say that they're still having issues getting inventory in. Are you seeing that from any of your guys that you're talking to out there?
I haven't heard that as much as I did a long time ago, or a few years ago in the COVID recovery, when you heard a lot about supply chain disruptions, and then it was a lot of just waiting on a little microchip. The truck was sitting in the parking lot ready to go, and just needed a microprocessor or something like that.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that as much. It seems to me like the carriers have been able to find the power equipment that they need. Of course, you do still see a lot of the big players in the tank truck segment still buying a lot of fleets. I mean, that's still the fastest way to grow quickly.
Yeah.
To diversify into new product segments or new regions.
Yeah.
Or grow your driver count quickly. Because I have heard the driver shortage was a big focus for NTTC for a while, and they're not really as worried about that now as I think they were. So. I think it's more about just worrying about volumes, the price of equipment, and some of the other things that like NTTC is working on as far as advocacy and legislative front that we could talk about. I wanted to ask you about another innovation is the pulsating brake lamps on the back of trailers, and you've probably heard about that.
Yeah.
It's something that I've been covering for a while because different players, NTTC, some of the suppliers have been seeking exemptions with FMCSA, and it seems like the agency has been piecemealing these exemptions together forever to allow this technology as opposed to changing the actual regulations.
Yeah.
Are you seeing more customers requesting that on the back of their trailers? Or
We aren't yet. We're still speccing out the trailers pretty standard. There are a couple of fleets that have asked for that technology. So obviously we use our manufacturing partners, Polar, Wabash, name Heil, any of them. We can spec them out that way. I think that's the beauty of leasing is you can come to us and kind of say, hey, this is what we need. We need it for 3 years. And instead of putting the big down payment of 20-30% on a trailer that's upwards of $110,000, you use that capital for something else to expand your business, and we'll take care of the leasing side.
Yeah. Well, I know there's a couple of different technologies out there. There's one that uses you install auxiliary brake lamps in addition to the required markers and everything, and those are what pulse. And then there's another company that makes basically a module that pulsates the existing trailer's lights.
Yeah.
And so there's some discussion there about, are those brakes still steady burning if they're pulsating?
Yeah.
And does that meet the requirement in the FMCSRs? And then the the problem there is who's actually allowed to install that device, because the way the government wants you to do it is to only allow the carrier to install it, whereas the carriers would prefer, I think, the OEMs or the leasing companies to take care of that. It would be a lot more efficient for them.
Yeah.
Come, the trailer, the equipment comes ready to go.
Yeah.
And so, I think there's still some confusion and some issues there, but I'm seeing more and more of these exemptions coming in. I think NTTC now is going to be trying to fight to get a change to the regulations, because it's kind of silly because these exemptions only last for 5 years.
Yeah.
And right now, for this one technology that pulsates the existing lights, the DOT, FMCSA has told carriers they all need to apply for their own exemption instead of just granting a blanket exemption for an OEM. So now you've had, I think, 9 or 10 different carriers who have had to apply for this exemption.
Yeah.
And I'm just seeing more and more of these come in. So I was curious what you had seen on the leasing side.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be a prevalent thing in the next 2 or 3 years.
Well, it seems like another no-brainer with the cameras, because the biggest issue with a tank trailer is getting rear-ended, especially at like a railroad crossing where they're like a school bus, they're required to stop.
Yeah.
Whereas for most people, that's kind of an unusual, unexpected, everyday traffic maneuver.
Yeah.
Especially when you're talking about distracted driving.
Yeah.
Because distracted driving now is a bigger problem than drunk driving.
Yeah.
Because everybody's on their phone, and then when they get pulled over, they don't admit they were on their phone. And
we don't have dashboard cams in our.
Were you on your phone?
Yep.
You can't give them a sobriety test.
Yeah.
And so the last thing you want to be doing is rear-ending the back of a tank trailer with anhydrous ammonia.
Yeah.
Or 8,000 gallons of diesel, or whatever it is. I mean, it's just a bad place to be. So to me, it's just a no-brainer, and I don't know why I don't know why it's so difficult to get it cleared through government. It's just everything takes so long in Washington, is what it seems like.
No, 100%. I want to circle back to what you were saying about fleets buying other fleets. I had this conversation with a buddy the other day. Do you kind of think that we're phasing out the mid-sized regional carrier?
I think it gets harder all the time just because it's so expensive to operate.
Yeah.
And so, and that's been bulk transporters' traditional audience. We've always focused on those smaller family-owned carriers, been in the same family for generations.
Yeah.
And that's kind of been our bread and butter. I think it's getting harder. I don't think they're going away completely, but there's more and more consolidation. That the largest players continue to get larger. Keenan Advantage Group, Hennef Transportation, Trimac, those companies have still been very active, even in tough markets. And so that's going to continue to happen. And then I think one of the big changes in the industry has been the involvement of private equity.
Yeah.
And, in a lot of situations where the family-owned company doesn't have somebody who's ready to step in and be that third generation to take over the company, that's a great solution to an exit strategy for somebody who's getting older and wants to retire and doesn't have anybody else to take over the company. And so you can see how that makes sense. But private equity has definitely, I think, changed things. And you can continue to see the consolidation, and we even see it on the publishing side, because even some of the suppliers have consolidated over the years.
Yeah.
And so that means fewer companies that can advertise in the magazine, which is how we keep that print publication going for all these years, because it's a free subscription magazine. So go subscribe to the magazine right now, by the way.
Yeah.
I think the industry consolidation is going to continue. It hasn't really slowed down. The big companies continue to get bigger for a lot of different reasons. Not only to add equipment, but like I said, also to get into new markets. Like I think with some of Keenan Advantage's recent plays, it was about building up their dry bulk equipment and their dry bulk services, which isn't something that they really had, or transloading. Getting into more those truck to rail type movements. Yeah. Because ISO tanks, I think, are something that you're starting to see a little bit more domestic use of ISO tanks in the U.S., which I think was always or has been for many years a lot more commonly accepted practice for over-the-road transportation, like in Europe. Yeah. Not as much here, just a lot of different dynamics, the way loading racks are set up and the way shippers are set up to receive product, that kind of thing. Yeah. But you're starting to see a little bit more of that. So I'm seeing some of these ISO tank depots getting bigger and expanding, and people trying to grow those ISO tank fleets. There's going to continue to be changes, and that's just kind of the way it goes, and you have to adapt. But I mean, I'm hoping those small and mid-sized companies will continue to be around, and I still don't have any problems finding new fleets to feature in the magazine.
No, I mean, I think you're still seeing an influx of newer carriers kind of sprout up, but I worked for Space City Services for a while. Yeah. Shout out Rob Thomas. Hope to have you on someday. But they ended up getting to like 120 trucks. Then they got bought out by Quantix because they really loved the hazardous waste and industrial waste that Space City was doing for all the plants, and Quantix wanted in, and just
that's a funny story. I got to know Rob a little bit. I actually went out to a Halloween party where he was.
Legendary Halloween parties.
The one where they got married.
Yeah,
we got married. That was a great party, and I had just got done featuring them on the cover of Bulk Transporter.
Oh yeah,
and then like a month after that magazine appeared, Quantix bought them.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually talked to the former CEO, Chris Ball, who's not there anymore. I'm like, are y'all just buying up all the companies that I put in the magazine now?
Yeah.
And he thought it was funny because it was a coincidence, and it was somebody that they had already been looking at for a while because they had their waste services as well.
Yeah.
And he just happened to be looking at it. He didn't think anybody knew about them, but I'm like, I'm in Houston, Space City.
Yeah, big name.
As soon as I saw that caught my attention. I knew I needed to write about them.
Yeah, so. Yeah. And the last thing I'll touch on, transporters. At some point, you think if enough of these big guys get so big, are we ever going to border on a monopoly?
I think there's still enough players right now where I don't know that would be a concern because, besides Keenan, TFI is a big company throughout trucking that has all kinds of businesses.
Yeah.
And they have a massive tank truck segment that would be probably top 5, top 10 for sure.
Oh, okay.
Just by itself, if you broke it out. If you look at all the companies they've acquired over the years. I wrote about UPT and Florida Rock combining forces recently. Did a story recently on the integration of those two. Basically formed maybe arguably the largest for-hire fuel hauler, I think, in the country now. And so you still have some other large players. Andrews is pretty big. They're definitely intent on growing. So I'm not sure that's a concern yet, but once you get below those top 5 or 10, there's definitely a huge gap.
Big drop off.
Yeah, where the next players in the industry are.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of to wrap this whole thing in a nice bow, we've talked about the highs, we've talked about the lows of chemical transport and where we see it going. What do you think the next 5-10 years look like as a liquid bulk hauler?
I think it's still going to be good. I think getting back to that report that I saw, I think chemicals have been where everybody is looking, but now they're starting to realize, hey, we're still going to need to haul fuel for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
Plastics are huge. I think, there's like natural gas production is big because, we're also, I think, sending more of that out on an export basis because I think we're one of the number one producers of natural gas in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's, construction is going to have to come back once the interest rates finally come down. And so you'll see more on the dry bulk side, I think, not necessarily liquid, but there's still, asphalt and that kind of stuff that goes into that. So I think they're still going to continue to be in a good position. I was wondering on the leasing side, from what I've understood recently, is just maybe with the cost of equipment these days, a lot of companies are now preferring to own their tractors or buy their tractors and lease their trailers. And traditionally, I thought the typical leasing customer was somebody who was maybe testing out a new lane or with seasonal work.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily seem like that's the case now. I was wondering what you were saying along those lines.
Yeah, so it's interesting, and we talked a little bit about it off air, but we do see a lot of these big fleets lean towards leasing. One is for, hey, we want a lane for 3 years. We don't want to commit to buying a new piece of equipment because we don't know what it's going to be after the third year. But a lot of it is just age of fleet, right? I've got a big fuel hauler customer that just recently forayed into chemical, and they were like, hey, every 2 or 3 years, we're going to turn these in, and we want the newest equipment. We want the newest technology, all the bells and whistles, because that looks good to your shippers and your consignees. If you've got an option of bringing in a 2025, 2026 brand new Polar or a, 1987 Fruhoff, no brainer, right?
Yeah, that's interesting because obviously the tank trailer, what you hear is the longevity. These barrels last forever. So it's not like a dry van necessarily or a refrigerator trailer that has insulation that degrades over time.
Yeah.
These barrels can last forever.
Yeah.
And so you do see some people running them for 20, 30, 40 years. Who knows how long they replace the suspensions, the frames. But I think now maybe just with the maintenance wise and the ease maybe of going to somebody who can provide those maintenance services, keep the tires going, and especially maybe these smart systems, is that something where maybe it's easier option for customers maybe now to lease a trailer?
I think so. I think they're looking at cost of their fleet and having all the maintenance that is associated with a 20, 30-year-old trailer instead of leasing a brand new one where we do all the VIK tests, the DOT test, get it road ready. They're not having to service that vehicle quite as much. I mean, obviously they're still doing their driver walkarounds and quarterly kind of checkups, but they're not seeing that same big cost that some of these guys that are running the older equipment are. And sorry to cut you off, but
no, obviously, that made me think. And I was wondering what kind of equipment your customers are looking for now. Because that will give me a good indication of what product segments are doing well.
Man, so a lot of people, and I was just about to bring this up, a lot of people are looking for lined trailers for corrosives, and that's another reason why you would lease, because you can come to somebody like me that has a giant fleet of DOT 412s. We buy a lot of them that are unlined. And then when a customer comes in and says, hey, I'm hauling 73% spent sulfuric, okay, well, hey, we use our partners over at Gartner Coatings or another liner company. This is what they recommend. Throw it in there. Hey, 2 years down the road, okay, well, we don't need it for 73% spent sulfuric. Now we're hauling HCl. Okay, we'll bring that same trailer back in. We'll blow that liner out, put a liner in for HCl. So there's a couple of liners that we're playing around with. Like, have you explored Kynar at all?
No.
So Kynar, we actually just partnered with one of our manufacturer partners, and we're building some of those. And they're like a catch-all for corrosive materials. Kynar can haul HCl, bleach, all cuts of sulfuric, and different other corrosive materials, all in the same liner. It's more expensive than your traditional liner, but you're doing the job of 5 different trailers that would have needed 5 different liners in the past, all with one. So...
yeah, and that's interesting that, as far as the line trailers, and that makes me wonder, so do you have FRP trailers in the lease fleet here?
We don't really do a lot of fiberglass trailers right now. That's something that we're looking into, but a lot of our stuff is just rubber lined.
Yeah, because I was wondering how that compared maintenance-wise, and 'cause I think some people maybe get intimidated by those liners, if they have to be changed out or something. I was wondering what your thoughts were on FRPs, how they maybe compare, if you've seen more people asking for those.
Man, we have, and I worked for another leasing company that did run some FRPs. I think both have their pluses and minuses. Some of those plastics, if you take them out on oil-filled roads, I've seen them come back with spider cracks in the barrel and stuff like that. You don't see that as much with stainless steel.
And they could be expensive to repair. I know,
oh,
so
yeah,
an issue.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
What about MC331s? Does Matlack have?
Yeah. We've recently forayed into that. We've got a fleet right now of about 30 MC331s. Most of them stay leased out. We're always looking to buy more. And with the recent influx of news, like somebody's bringing a LNG plant to Corpus, and there's a few other ones that people are bringing in. I think MC331s are going to be a big player in the future. I mean, we've already got Grammer Logistics runs a ton of them.
Yes, they do. Actually going to meet with somebody from Grammer on Wednesday for lunch, Patrick Mayer.
Patrick Mayer. I worked for Grammer, so tell him I said hey.
I will. Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, do you have a preferred supplier for those MC331s?
We use Mississippi Tank a lot.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah, and I think they've actually and you said you have Heil and Polars here, right? So there was some interesting news on the OEM side recently with Heil and Polar being bought by Terravest Industries.
I saw that.
Because they had been private equity owned, and so they have a big plant down in Mexico.
Yep.
Heil did, and I had been down there to tour it. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And when I first started hearing some signs that they were thinking about, wondering about how tariffs were going to impact their operations as far as sending trailers into the U.S. from that Mexico plant in Juarez. I started hearing some rumblings. I thought maybe there was some concern. They were concerned about how that was going to impact them. Well, I think it turned out that they were just doing due diligence about this sale, and I think it was just related to being private equity that we talked about earlier. They were ready to flip Intrans, the parent company for those companies, and so I talked to Ryan Rockefeller with Intrans, and he said, yeah, it was just kind of the way it worked out because of the private equity ownership. But the group that they owned or that they joined, TerraVest, also owns Mississippi Tank Company, I believe. Yeah. And then right after that happened, Intrans bought LBT, stainless steel, their stainless steel division, I think, and they also bought TankCon.
Yeah.
Which is a big FRP manufacturer.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's some kind of interesting things going on the OEM side, and I was wondering if you had seen any kind of repercussions from that, or
not so far. None of our points of contact have changed yet, and we actually just ordered some more 407s. Price didn't drastically change with tariffs coming out of Mexico. So far so good. Knock on wood that nothing else happens in the negative on that, but. No, I think it's a good thing for the industry. I think that they're gonna pour money into it and make it as good as they can.
And you'd asked me about some of the trends in the industry that I've seen, and so I thought I could just touch on that briefly with like what NTTC is looking at and trying to do for its members.
Yeah.
One of their big wins recently was on duplicative security screening for drivers that have to go through a background check and all this different stuff to get a TWIC card, and also their hazmat endorsement and these different things, having to go through the same process over and over, pay an additional fee, for no reason for the same process. And that was actually something that, NTC actually finally got passed through and signed into law, where they're kind of eliminating some of that now. So that was a big win.
Yeah.
Another thing that they're working on now is this dry bulk axle tolerance, which again, I guess doesn't apply as much to a liquid, but just kind of looking at the way a dry bulk load will shift in a trailer. It will sometimes cause a trailer that's in compliance as far as how much weight it can hold, but it's overloaded on one axle when it gets to the weigh station.
Shift. Okay.
Because of the shift. So they a lot of times will load less product into the trailer because they're afraid of getting dinged for being overweight on one axle. So that's something where NTTC is trying to work on getting an axle variance so they're allowed to, as long as they have the correct trailer load limit in there, that if one axle is slightly over, it's not going to get them to be sidelined.
Interesting.
And then they've gotten a little bit more into this, the FET. I'm sure you hear a lot about FET on the truck side, this federal excise tax. I think the oldest excise tax in the country or something like that, and how much more it adds to the cost of a truck, which are already so much more expensive now. And if you want to spur adoption of newer, cleaner, supposedly cleaner vehicles, then you should make them a little bit more affordable.
Make it more cost efficient.
So it makes sense to repeal something like that. The problem is, how else are you going to replenish the Highway Trust Fund?
Yeah.
Which is already struggling, I think, to keep ahead of the damage to roads and bridges that's going on.
Yeah.
So if you want to get rid of the FET, then you're going to have to come up with some other viable form that is
to pump money
keep
back
replenishing
in.
it.
Yeah.
And so that's where I think they're trying to figure out, what's that solution? Because if we want to ever get this passed, we're going to have to come up with some other remedy. And so it's not necessarily a tank trailer industry specifically, but they're starting to get a little bit more involved in that.
Yeah.
And then maybe one other thing that I would mention is just the electronic shipping papers for hazmat.
Oh, okay.
There's still the requirement for carriers to have paper copies in their cab, which aren't really ever used.
Yeah.
And, even I think first responders will tell you that they don't really use them, especially when you get into an incident where you can't access them in the vehicle anyways, or they go up in flames or something like that. People use their tablets, their phones, or whatever to electronically submit key details that first responders need. But they should be allowed to do that electronically now, just the way everything else is done, even for hazmat. And so I think that's something maybe they'll have some potential of making some headway, I think, in the coming years. So those are kind of things that I think tank truck carriers are looking at right now, along with the things that everybody else is thinking about with volumes and capacity and equipment costs.
Yeah.
But I think just overall, there's a lot to look forward to on the tank truck side.
I think so too. I think the only thing that I'm seeing, and I don't know if you're seeing the same thing, is at the end of the day, it's all about the people, right? And I've heard that the driver age is getting older and older, and we're not replenishing the driver pool as much. I mean, what do you think that they're going to do to kind of combat that? Or is there going to be some type of program to get people behind the wheel of a truck again?
So there's a couple things that I would say that NTTC has been working on a branding campaign for the overall industries. It was called "See Yourself in a Tank Truck," which was
cool,
trying to bring more drivers, especially prospective drivers, younger generations in to replenish that pool. Now I will say that the turnover rate is way better in tank truck than it is in the general. When you hear about 100% or 150% turnover. you see much better numbers, much more
retention
reasonable numbers
for drivers on the
and
bulk
some
side,
of them like
yeah.
G&D Hoffman Transportation that I think has like less than 1% turnover for the entire time their company has been in existence or something like that. So I don't think that turnover is as big an issue, but older drivers aging out of the workforce, that is an issue because you're still trying to appeal to those younger people, and if they can't enter the industry until they're 22 or 23, sometimes longer for tank truck carriers because you
got to have 2 years.
They're the best of the
too,
best,
yeah.
and they're hauling volatile products, so they're looking for a great driver. But if you have to wait that long to enter, then you've probably already chosen something else to do.
Yeah.
By the time you get into it, so. Yeah, I think trying to find a way to get to younger people before they make a decision about what trade they want to enter is the key. And I know, recently Mark Schroyer from Grammar Logistics was named the Professional Tank Truck Driver of the Year.
Yeah,
in Tampa.
I saw that.
And he's actually an older guy, but he's got tons of stories that he can tell, and he's a huge truck enthusiast. I think him and his brothers have like 70 trucks in their collection that they've restored and that are on display at the American Truck Historical Society and the Iowa 80 Museum.
Cool.
All kinds of classic tractors that have been used to pull tanks in some cases. He won the Tank Truck Driver of the Year, and one of his goals is to try to reach those kids and to try to explain to them all of the great things that tank truck driving has done for him in his career, all the great experiences that he's had, places that he's been able to go.
Yeah.
And and I asked him, how are you going to connect with those younger people? Because it's a different. I have trouble connecting with my kids. I think I told you I have a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard to speak the same language.
Yeah.
And how are you going to reach those younger kids when you're trying to convince them to come into the industry? And it's about telling those stories about the great places he's been able to go, all the things he's seen through the windshield of a truck. And conveying that passion, and then also that truck side, because everybody loves trucks. I mean, trucks are cool. It's great pieces of equipment, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the tank trailers are even cooler because they're more complex. But everybody likes trucks. So I think if you can connect with younger people, because you're right, it's about building relationships. It's about getting people to see the passion that you have for something, and want to consider that themselves. So I think, reaching younger drivers is going to be the key. But overall, again, tank truck does really well turnover-wise and benefits-wise and pay-wise.
Yeah.
And so they don't have that turnover that you see, the crazy turnover numbers you see in other segments.
Yeah, and you touched on it, man. I mean, this is a people-driven industry. The people in this industry are great. I always say that the chemical industry is large, but when you really get in it, it's a small group of people that are all here for one another, and I mean it's just really cool to hear all the stories from people like you, people that are driving the trucks, and just all throughout this industry, man. We've got such a diverse group of people. Well,
yeah, no, so I appreciate you having me on. It's been great, Alex. A great discussion. I can't believe we're already run as long as we have.
I know. I didn't think we would do it. Let's plug where you're at. How can the people find you, and then we'll wrap this thing up.
So yeah, I'm based in the Houston area, which is a great place to be for covering the industry. That's for sure. There's no lack of great carriers and suppliers and service providers and tank wash operators and terminals and leasing companies. So it's a great. I'm based in the Houston area. If you want to find Bulk Transporter online, it's bulktransporter.com. We have lots of great stories there. We have a newsletter that goes out every week, and I would just say, please sign up for the newsletter and the print subscription. Like I said, it's the oldest magazine covering the tank truck industry in the country. Been around since 1937, and I want to see it continue for another 100 years or another 88 years. So the subscription is free. The newsletter is free. Please go sign up for it and keep reading. And you're always going to see something new in Bulk Transporter about what's going on in the industry. What about Matlack? Where do they find you guys?
Yeah, man, matlackleasing.com. We also run the chassis leasing side, Penn Intermodal. You can find us on either of those. I'm the national sales manager for both. I would say follow Jason on LinkedIn. He's a great follow if you want to be in the know. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm an okay follow. But we appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to Chemical Reactions presented by Matlack Leasing. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, share it with a friend, and leave us a review. Until next time. Special thanks to Matlack Leasing, presenting sponsor of our podcast. When it comes to liquid bulk trailer leasing, Matlack is your go-to expert. Whether you're transporting chemicals, food-grade products, or other liquids, Matlack Leasing provides the reliable trailers you need for safe and efficient delivery. Choose Matlack Leasing for unmatched quality and service. Visit matlackleasing.com today to learn more.